Welcome back to the lands of Middle-earth, all you Lord of the Rings Middle-earth role-playing fans. Roman Daysol, back with Treasures of Middle-earth, number 8006 of the series, a compendium of magical items and whatnot. Yeah, an awesome picture there of Celebrimbor making one of his rings. He's got some elves around him and some dwarves, which is not right because he wouldn't have had dwarves with him when he was making these rings of power. But what can you do? This book was this book came out in 1989 from Iron Crown, and it is just a compendium of stuff: arms, armor, garments, gear, jewelry, gems, valuables, magical items, etc. So let's go through this book just briefly. First, they start with arms. So like any book, any of these compendiums they have a listing. So if it's from an Iron Crown one, like Lords of Middle-earth Volume 3, so that's page 20. Ice's Angmar, page 33, or down here, you would also have the Silmarillion, page 364, 390, Lord of the Rings 1. So that's Aglos, which was Gil-galad's famous spear. So it gives you various weapons. Any weapon that was named in any of Tolkien's works are going to be in here, as well as anything that's named in any of the campaign or adventure modules up to that point. For example, Amtur's sword, which is in Ice's Mouth of the Antwash, page 9. You also have Aragorn's famous sword, Anduril, Flame of the West, and that has many different references. And it just goes on, like there's some pretty cool ones in here. The Axe of Durian is Angmar 20, and it gives a description of what the axe is. Forged in the Elder Days, after the coming of Morgoth and the discovery of the dragons. The axe is one of Durin's 7 weapons. Yeah. The powers, it gives you a list of its powers. A plus 30 dwarven axe thrown and returned, detects Balrogs, dragons, orcs, Sauron, undead, and Morgoth at 7 miles. That didn't work, because if Durin had this axe in the mid-Third Age, he would have detected a Balrog. So that failed miserably. So that's Ice's creation. It's found on page 20 of Angmar. So somehow the Witch King of Angmar got a hold of the Axe of Durian when Khazad-dûm was still a thing. Don't ask me how. That's one of MERP's creations. So they also give for the Eastern dwarves that they had, the Battle Axe of Fulla the Third, Lord of the Rings. So that came of Lords of Middle-earth, Volume 3, page 54. So again, I firmly believe that the guys at Iron Crown were planning to make a Far Eastern Dwarven campaign module. Other ones, Ledorthin's spear, he was mentioned in The Hobbit. Spears that were crafted by the dwarves of Erebor. You get the Whip of the Balrog, Dagger of the Usurper, Durin's Axe, yeah, we did that. So a whole bunch of really awesome weapons that you could potentially put in your campaign to use. It's got a Gron the Excavator from Morgoth's time. You'll have Gimli's Hammer, Glamdring the Foe Hammer, the Morgul Knife, and it gives the powers of the Morgul Knife. A plus 20 strike as a short sword, dissolve when exposed to sunlight, break off whenever the night yields a critical strike. Narsil, the Red-White Flame. It also gives the names of these things if they have them, which I like. Orcus, the Goblin Cleaver. And it tells you if it's Sindarin or Quenya. The Red Arrow even has the red arrow that was symbolic, that was sent from Gondor to Rohan in Lord of the Rings. Didn't really need that one, but I guess you could. A Pixie Bow. Don't think there's going to be a Pixie Bow in Lord of the Rings. Pixies aren't a thing. That's more of a Dungeons and Dragons idea. Sauron's sword, Samwise's dagger. Sting. Even has Lobelia's umbrella. Plus 10 hits as a main gosh and does additional tiny criticals of the same value. So you get Lobelia's umbrella and start whacking people with it. So a lot of good ideas. Some are obviously D&D inspired. But a lot of them come out of Lord of the Rings, which is good. Tolkien's works. Next up, they got armor. So they go through all the various armors that can be found. Aragorn's mithril mail, which is just... He never actually wore mithril. He was given some mail while he was at Edoras by Theoden. And then probably when he got to Gondor, he got some better armor. And quite possibly Halbrand and the Dunedain from the north arrived with his armor as well. But no one knows. There's not a lot of armor mentioned in Lord of the Rings itself, other than Frodo's mithril coat, which is there, Frodo's mail. So it's like plate armor. Gauntlets of Slaying, Gauntlets of Sorrow, Helms, the Helm of Anarion, which became pretty much the Crown of Gondor. It makes for good reading. Like I said, you could leave these in a campaign. You could use one. Next up, we got garments and gear. The belt of Queen Baratheon is one of those mentioned. So again, it's in the Empire of the Witch King, page 56. She was a queen of Gondor during the reign of King Taranon, who got sent with her cats and was shipped out on a boat, supposedly. You have to read Unfinished Tales, really, for that one. Boots, capes, cloaks, crowns, the elven cloaks that are mentioned, plus 20 to hiding and stalking, so that's its powers. Scarves, tunics, gloves, more cloaks, boots, shrouds, masks, all sorts of little fun things that you could have. So this compendium is much better than the creature compendium, because you can actually use these more in campaigns. But again, all this stuff can be found in the books themselves, but you could take something somewhere and put it somewhere else. Then it goes into next it goes up to jewelry, gems, and valuables. So obviously the Arkenstone would be a big one of those. Used as a bargaining chip by Bilbo to try and buy peace. It didn't work, but it was a good try. The Crown of the Reunited Kingdoms is there. Cup of the Brewer. Earrings. The Elisar, the Elfstone, is the main one. Powers, Protection Prayer, 6-time PPP multiplier. Living things do not die. Aging occurs at a very reduced rate. This power is like that of the 3. So I don't think that would happen. The Elisar was just really powerful. It was just a stone that offered protection. Prayer protection. Gave you hope. Galadriel's gift, the one that she gave to Gimli. You get idols. The Iron Crown of Morgoth. Oh, there's one from Shadow in the South. Lord Vorakon's voice. So these obviously incorporate Shadow in the South too. That's good. The Mithril Room, which is in Lost Realm of Cardolan, page 55. That's an actual adventure campaign. That was a really good one. Tried to find the Mithril Room on multiple occasions. And if you did it with the entire Four Kingdoms campaign that I did, you could use, if you had an adventures, there's a lot of pre things to do before you get to the actual Four Kings adventure. But if you found the Mithril Room, even though it's not really Mithril but debased silver, you could actually use the money from those panels to help pay for your army. It goes a long way in equipping an army. Phial of Galadriel, scepters, the Simarils, which are the most important jewels in the whole thing. Of course, you're not going to find one of those. If you did, it wouldn't be a good idea. The Silver Rod of Anduni, which is the Scepter of Anunimus. So many ideas here that you could throw into a campaign if you had to. Then you go to books. The Book of Mazarbul, or records of, is obviously one you're going to take as well from Moria. That was there. The Red Book of the West March, which Bilbo did. The Quintus Silmarillion, which is another one. 7 books of Mazarbul. And even got the Tale of Aragorn and Arwen. That's in Lord of the Rings Volume 3. The Thane's Book. And you got food, elixirs, and entrants. And like that. Entrant being the big one. Scrying devices, so things you can see. The Mirror of Galadriel would be probably the most powerful of those. And the Palantiri. But they do have some other ones that you can use that Ice created. Staves and wands. So this is more like the Ishtari. So Gandalf's staff, Saruman's staff. You'd have Radagast's staff somewhere in here. Next up, talismans and miscellany. So not much here that you would recognize, but there are some pretty good ideas here, like the Eyes of the Well. Akora Hill, the ring, the Nazgul. He had Eyes of the Well. Exchanged his eyes for these things. Musical instruments. So like the bullroar, Bandobrass's Took's heirloom, which is a bullhorn. Boromir's great horn. Horn of the Mark, which came from the Scathe of the Worm. Then it goes into the really important ones, the Rings of Power, and it gives a complete back history of the Rings of Power. Their general powers, the 3 elven rings, gives a description of each individual one of those and what their powers are. The 9 rings for mortal men, tells you what they do. The 7 dwarven rings, before going into lesser rings. Now MERP creates a whole bunch of lesser rings that act like, but the only real ring that would be of any use would be the Ring of Bear here, which is an heirloom of the Kingdom of Arnor. But there's all these different rings. Rings seem to play a big role in MERP creations. Tools and trappings. Not much you can use here. You get pick locks and stuff like that. Card decks, a smithy, pens, trinkets, weaves. Then next it goes into the creator. So the Eru being the Iluvatar and the Anur being the Valar and the Maiar. So Eru created most things. He's the source. And the Valar are the channels. The Maiar, the Ishtari, who are actually Maiar. Then the Free Peoples, the Dwarves, who are master builders and craftsmen. Though the Noldor and Elves would surpass them in many ways. And gives a pretty good description. This is really good reading material when you're in the bathroom. Elves, same idea, jewelsmiths. Hobbits, which don't make much. Men. You have obviously Morgoth, who corrupted what was already created, or created things differently. Sauron would definitely. Servants of Darkness, so you get demons, which means Balrogs, orcs, trolls, who don't really create anything. The only thing a troll would create would be a club. Next you got materials, so you're going with your, obviously, diamonds, emeralds, land, which is black, which is volcanic glass. Herbs and plants, so if you want to make a poison. Athelos would be in this one, would be in this category. Or kingsfoil. Don't really use it too much. Metals, so obviously you're going to get your usual iron, Caleb, and Mal, as well as mithril and all sorts of other fun ones that were created. Next up you get stones. Again, not much difference there. Woods, so you woods for shaping things. Malorm would be the best one. And then enchanted materials, which would be dragons, so dragon scales, stuff. Anything you use from a dragon, like the horns, the scales, and stuff like that. And then finally, part 3, you get a treasure classification chart. This I did use, because sometimes it is useful to what you're going to find. So generating a random treasure map, you get well size depending on your role, and composition rolls. So you're going to get all this stuff. Money is great, but too much money can be a bad thing. You find a huge hoard, it's like, how are you going to carry it? Magical item composition, magical treasure size. Capabilities chart, if you want to create some of your own. So those were useful. Spell list charts. And spell list, Rollmaster. And then an item and spell level chart. So that's very useful. Overall, I found this book more useful than the previous books. Much better than Creatures. So I could use this one in campaigns occasionally, or mix things up a little, add things in. So that's what it was. I mostly used it for. So I was happy when I bought this. I think I paid what, $24 at Imperial Hobbies back in the day. But anyway, any other Middle-earth role-playing fans out there, let me know if you guys own this book. Did you get to use it in a campaign, or did you just sit in the bathroom and read it? Leave comments in the comments section. Hit that like button or notification bell, because I'm going to keep doing this until the entire collection is out, and then figure out what to do after that. So that'd be another year. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Till next time, this is Roman Daisel. I'm out of here.